8 kilometers. That's the distance that turns a border incident into a readiness audit. You clicked for answers on how a low-signature drone can step over a NATO line and not trigger a clean intercept. In this breakdown, we map the likely sensor gaps, the altitude bands where radar performance collapses, and what a quick reaction alert should do but often can't when the target is small, slow, and hugging terrain. Stay with me, because the way those layers fail in sequence tells you exactly where the next breach will happen, and how to close it. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. 8 kilometers sounds tight. It's the lane where physics hands the baton to protocol, and a slow drone gets the first move. You think the net is solid. It is, until the ground bites the beam and the filters do their job a little too well. Start at the top. Primary radar throws power and waits for echoes. Secondary surveillance asks for a reply and only hears what cooperates. Passive RF hunts for emissions.
Drones deliberately sent into Poland, and of course we have the right to defend our airspace, the security of our citizens and their property.
Then it sent a drone into Romania, and for 12 minutes on September 19th, 3 Russian fighter jets lingered over the skies in Estonia before NATO mobilized F-35 jet fighters to repel them.
Actions as a part of the spectrum of their hybrid war, which includes information warfare, arsons, assassinations, sending parcels with incendiary devices.
ADS-B filters keep civil air clean by ignoring small, unlisted specks. Between those layers sits a low-altitude corridor, trees, rooftops, power lines, where a light airframe can ride the seam. The tension lives near the border. Ground radar loses the literal layer fast. Earth curvature drops the line of sight. Hills and buildings carve shadows. Ground clutter fills the scope with returns that look alive. A small, composite body at treetop height blends into noise because its radar cross-section tracks with birds, not jets. Here's the frame: radar horizon collapses at low altitude. The beam scrapes the surface, and the drone hides in the splash, ground return, foliage scatter, moving cars. You can pump more power, but you can't bend geometry. The horizon stays king. So you lean on passive eyes. RF sensors want a talker, a disciplined drone stays silent. EO/IR towers need clear sky and contrast. A cool, slow prop arc against mixed background gives them little. Acoustic arrays like steady signatures, wind, traffic, and water throw false tones. Each sensor helps, but each one has a blind hour. Think of the net as a fence with barbed wire across the top. At ground level, there's fog and tall grass. That's where the breach happens. At 60 to 120 knots, 8 kilometers buys minutes. Enough time to drift deeper while controllers build a track that holds. The first hard hit likely comes late, at slant range where classification stalls and queuing trails. That marks a detection failure first, not an intercept failure. The physics strip the net, now the pressure falls on people and process. The clock starts, and the QRA checklist meets a moving target. The clock starts on a ghost. The scope shows a smear, not a track. QRA loses seconds before it gains a target.
Another incursion of Russian drones into Polish airspace. You might do more than shoot them down. There was an implication that NATO might take this battle to Russia. Do you believe that this is part of a Russian strategy of probing to see whether NATO is actually going to respond if it were to do things in NATO territory?
And there are procedures for it. You intercept incoming drones or aircraft. You try to send them home, or you try to make them land.
Here's the doctrine in motion. Crews sit on alert, suits on, jets cold or warm depending on posture. The scramble order hits, ground crews pull pins, engines light. Taxi is short if the shelters are pointed right, longer if they're buried in the stack. Takeoff comes hot, then a climb to an altitude that matches the threat band. Controllers vector the flight, push headings, set speeds. The crew expects a radar merge, then a visual ID if sensors can't lock. That's the clean script. But the target isn't clean. A small, slow drone at 200 to 500 feet AGL can slip through refresh cycles and nudge its heading 20 degrees without tripping alarms. Every dropout forces a reset. Is it clutter, bird, or hostile? That hesitation isn't cowardice. It's process. Command friction builds. Controllers want track quality, stable speed, heading, altitude. They need a positive ID path and safe lanes around civil air traffic. Each call to deconflict eats a minute.
This was a deliberate provocation. 21 drones were launched from a single location, different from the launch sites of the drones against Ukraine. Instead of warheads, they had extra fuel tanks. So the Russians were trying to test us without starting the war. Test our air defenses, test the resilience of our population, the unity of our government. Composition of the drone swarm was different. If it was a sideshow of the attack on Ukraine, you would expect the same proportion of armed and unarmed drones. All these drones were unarmed.
Each request for confirmation eats another. You feel it in your gut because the jet is burning fuel and the plot still jitters. Fighters are built to hunt fast, high metal. A slow mover near terrain drags them down to the weeds, where radar loses look-down range and the risk curve steepens, wires, weather, and the ground. Lock quality suffers, overshoot becomes easy. Now the pilot flies formation with a target that barely moves. Policy tightens at borders. Rules of engagement and escalation ladders lock decisions to specific authorities. Kinetic action inside Allied airspace takes a clear chain of approval, and those signatures don't appear at the speed of a burner climb. Look at past air policing scrambles across Europe. Slow movers and lost comms aircraft drew fighters, but visual ID took long vectors and patience. No clean shot, just long legs and low passes. 8 kilometers inside, every mile at low altitude worsens geometry. Speed turns into overshoot and fuel math. That red flag points to failure in fast queuing and ROE timing, not a mistrigger. Now you see where physics meets authorization, and why escalation follows. 8 kilometers is the tell. It proves the first failure lived in detection and queuing, long before any pilot, missile, or cockpit sensor could fix the geometry. The breach began at the console, not the canopy. You want the fix? Fund the layers that close the seam. Passive nets that hear what won't speak. SHORAD that reaches low and fast without burning a fighter sortie. Rapid ROE paths that cut minutes from approvals. Subscribe and tell me which layer you'd fund first. Comment your choice below. The next breach won't wait. You solve it with physics-aware sensors and faster authority. Not louder engines. The budget choice starts now.